Polkadot's the name, interrupts the game, bridging blockchains, making all the same, Web3 vision, expanding our range, decentralized future, it's time for a change. Hi everyone, welcome to Edison Bob. Today we are having a Polkadot explained by ChatGPT video. So I was just curious to see how much does ChatGPT actually know about Polkadot, and I made up a complete interview with ChatGPT, the latest version, ChatGPT 4 that is currently on the market, and it has a knowledge cutoff somewhere in 2021. So it doesn't know the latest developments, which we're going to see. And I tried to ask it a simple question. I tried to go into a little bit of the concepts that we're seeing and tried to put in a few funny questions in between. Overall, it was 16 questions. And I think this video should work for a total beginner in Polkadot who is a little bit knowledgeable in crypto, and it should also work for advanced users of Polkadot, hardcore users who want to see how advanced ChatGPT is actually about the topic of Polkadot. And of course, we start with a simple question: what is Polkadot? And I, in the preparation for this video, asked several questions several times to see if the answers are different, but this is a fairly consistent answer of what ChatGPT answers about Polkadot. So it focuses the heterogeneous, let's start at the beginning. Polkadot is decentralized, open source, scalable and interoperable blockchain platform designed to facilitate secure communication and data transfer between multiple blockchains. So great explanation. It is fairly dense in the concepts that it is using, but I think it's very spot on. It was created by Dr. Gavin Wood, a co-founder of Ethereum and the founder of the Web3 Foundation at Parity Technologies. Good introduction. And then it highlights the heterogeneous sharding. So this basically means that there are different blockchains on different shards living and all being secured by the relay chain. It introduces the concept of the relay chain, the central chain that coordinates all the blockchains. It introduces the concept of parachains, which is at the core of Polkadot and basically is the whole idea of the heterogeneous sharding. It is very focused, actually, ChatGPT is very focused on the concept of bridges, which was in the early papers and graphics, bridges were very much emphasized. Today they are not so much emphasized, but of course they're very important. But basically when you have an internet of blockchains, it is connecting parachains and it is bridging to all the other chains. And then ChatGPT is also highlighting nominated proof of stake. It's one variant of proof of stake, and I think it's important to highlight it because proof of stake is not proof of stake. It depends on what you're actually looking at. I was asking it a little bit about the history, and there's also a fact that I learned here. So basically, it highlights again that Gavin Wood, co-founder of Ethereum, started developing it, that there was the white paper published in 2016, the Web3 Foundation and Parity founded in 2017, and then that the ICO was happening and that it did raise $145 million. So I wasn't aware of that fact. But that's actually a pretty nice number, and so that was raised in ETH. Yeah, and then it goes into the early development history, so that there were early proof of concept, that there was the proof of authority network, and then that it followed into the proof of stake network. So the next obvious question is, what are parachains actually? Because while we have very similar concepts in other networks, parachains is still a fairly unique concept. And so I wanted to know, what does ChatGPT know about parachains? And it basically explains that parachains are a fundamental component, and these are specialized blockchains that are secured by the relay chain. And then it goes into a few of the core concepts. So it's a heterogeneous design. They can be tailored to specific use cases, customized and optimized for performance. That they have shared security, and that the security is coming from the relay chain. And it also mentions validators and consensus mechanisms. that they are focused on interoperability. So blockchains, parachains can interoperate with each other. They can communicate with each other. Parachains are obtained by a parachain auction and can optionally work with a crowd loan. So in this regard, I think ChatGPT is fairly solid in understanding how parachains work, that there are crowd loans where crowd contributors can bond or lend the DOT tokens, and that they may receive project-specific rewards, tokens, incentives. So I think up until here, it has the concept of Polkadot fairly good understood. We can see then a little bit later that the knowledge cutoff in 2021 is pretty important, because this was sort of when Polkadot actually got rolling and when it transitioned from being a theory into being transitioned into a practice where we have actual parachains live, we have practical experience with crowd loans and parachain auctions and so on. And the first step where you can see this is that up until now, if you're deep into Polkadot, you talk about XCM a lot, but up until now, ChatGPT didn't mention XCMP at all. So I was probing it a little bit and I had to find the right question to get a good answer. So I was asking, how do parachains communicate? And the answer is they communicate through a process called cross-chain message passing, XCMP. So XCMP is still a word or a phrase used today, but the whole narrative has focused much more from the message passing, which is a technical thing, to the actual language that is spoken between parachains and that builds on XCM. And the concept basically has grown in the time since there is the knowledge cutoff of ChatGPT. So it knows about XCMP, but it's when you read this, it is very much about the theory about outgoing messages, message delivery, and so on, which is technical. It is important, but not if you want to have a general understanding or an overview about the whole system. Okay, then I was interested in how does governance in Polkadot work? Because governance, when you're inside Polkadot, you take a lot of the stuff as given, but actually I think on the governance side, Polkadot is fairly advanced. And so I just wanted to see what ChatGPT knows about it. So it mentions that DOT token holders can participate in governance, and that governance is designed to be decentralized, transparent, inclusive, and allowing the community to participate in the decision making. So we have DOT token holders voting, and then we have a referendum. So it basically highlights that there is this process of having a referendum where a proposal is made on-chain. It mentions the on-chain voting, that DOT holders are voting, and that the outcome is determined by the majority. And then it goes into a technicality again, so adaptive quorum biasing, which is one of the, or basically there can be different mechanisms chosen in governance 1.0 by which the voting is happening. Do you want to have a supermajority, the for or against the proposal, or does it not really matter? Should it be a simple majority? And so this is sort of what is being mentioned here. And then that there is a council and a technical committee. So all of this is basically how governance 1.0 has been working before the transition to OpenGov. And OpenGov is a concept that was introduced in 2022 as basically as a word, and also I think all of the primitives were also introduced in 2022. So obviously ChatGPT is not aware of that, but at least it can describe how governance originally worked. By the way, you can also see that it doesn't, I don't think it mentions forkless upgrade here in this part, but let's see. Okay, then I was probing a little bit, let's get a little bit more specific. So what actual projects does ChatGPT know? And I said, make a list of all projects that you know in Polkadot and add up to 3 keywords per project. So it was probing a little bit into what does it know. And answers are a little bit mixed. So it knows Acala, and it describes it as DeFi, stablecoin, and staking. Then Moonbeam, Ethereum compatible smart contracts, developer friendly. So up until here, this is sort of the top 2 projects at the time. And then it mentions Kusama, Canary Network Experimental Early Stage Development, which is true, but I mean, yes, I think from the outside perspective, it would be true to consider it as a project of Polkadot, but it's weird to find it in this list. Then we have Chainix, which was active some time ago, but I haven't heard about the project in quite some time, so I'm not sure if it's active any longer. Then we have Edgeware here, which is sort of built on Substrate, but works like not on the same consensus as Polkadot, or not on the same security, so it's an independent network. But yes, it's a project related to Polkadot. So Plasm Network is basically layer 2 scaling and Ethereum. I'm not really sure, because Plasm, my understanding of Plasm is that it's an Ethereum technology. Maybe I missed something here and there was a project called Plasm Network, or maybe some project rebranded. I'm not really so sure about this, but I'm not really sure. Okay, it knows about Fala, it knows about Darwinia. Polkastarter is fun because this was part of the Polkastarter and Refinance were projects that were still discussed when I joined Polkadot 2 years ago, but they were not really seen as a strong part of Polkadot. So they started out, from my understanding, marketing as Polkadot projects, but then over time moved away or were sorted out. And I think this has to do with Polkadot actually being not the best breeding ground for projects that are looking for easy money. And projects that look for easy money don't have an easy time getting a slot, usually, if they don't plan on delivering something solid. And these are sort of projects that were very much focused on actually, I think this is sort of like a launch pad, but then it focused on ERC20 or Binance tokens. And I think Refinance was even maybe a little bit similar. So haven't heard about those projects in quite some time. So here you can see a lot can change in 2 years about what the actual training data would look like. And I would actually be interested to see how ChatGPT will talk about Polkadot when it has updated information up until 2023 now. Okay, zooming out a little bit, what are some common challenges or limitations associated with Polkadot? So up until now, it was very nice talk about what Polkadot can actually do, but let's challenge ChatGPT a little bit and ask about what challenges or limitations are there. And I think this sort of hit fairly good. So first it talks about complexity, about the architecture. And I think this is a sentiment that is still reflected today, that Polkadot is complex in nature. It takes time to get into it, to understand it. So this, I think, is still very much true today. Also, using Substrate and the whole process of building a parachain. While all of the concepts make sense, but putting it all together is quite a big chunk of work. Parachain slot availability is considered a limitation, which is sort of true. The number of parachain slots is limited, but this is just determined by the nature of any blockchain system. It has limited resources. And parachains are a mechanism to sell block space. So on Ethereum, you would buy each transaction with gas, and on Polkadot, you can buy a bulk, do a bulk buy of block space and call this a parachain slot. So the limitation is sort of natural. I mean, it's still a limitation, but yeah, I guess it's interesting to talk about it because it helps you understand the more intricate details about how block space is being treated in Polkadot. Ecosystem maturity was, I guess, a much more bigger topic in 2021. It's still a topic, but from what I see is that Polkadot's making constant progress. But yeah, integration and interoperability. What does it say here? While it aims to promote interoperability, achieving seamless integration with existing platforms may pose technical challenges. Yes, this is true. For example, Bridge to Ethereum has been in development for many years. And when I joined the ecosystem 2 years ago, there was sort of the rumors that it's about to launch, but there were more and more challenges being confronted. So it takes time to integrate, especially against other blockchain ecosystems. This is a fun one, regulatory uncertainty. So this is true for many blockchain projects, but I think Parity and the Web3 Foundation have been working hard on removing regulatory uncertainty. So this is highlighted by the recent campaign where they actually promoted this very publicly, that they worked a lot with the SEC to make sure that Polkadot is being seen as software and not as a security. And I guess that this is one of the biggest moves that you can make from a legal perspective to ensure that everything that Parity and the Web3 Foundation has done was in line to ensure that Polkadot is not seen as a security. So I guess this might have been mitigated by now, but yeah, it's important to mention it. Scalability, yeah, I wouldn't say that this scalability is not really a problem in Polkadot, because there is block space available and everyone can get it. The competition is getting a little bit stronger in the recent weeks about acquiring parachain slots. So this might be a topic for the future, but this has more with to do with the limitation. So at the moment, I don't think that scalability is an issue. Team is actually constantly working on adding more scalability. There is asynchronous backing coming for parachains, which can improve the time for parachains to produce blocks. It can be 6-second block times, or in theory, it could be even faster block times, so producing multiple blocks in parallel and so on. So scalability, I don't think, is an issue at the moment. Okay, then the question here is basically, shill me Polkadot. Can you describe scenarios where Polkadot would be particularly beneficial? What could be good use cases for Polkadot? And what it mentions here is cross-chain DeFi, which I think is a very excellent choice. When you want to do cross-chain DeFi, Polkadot is a good choice because it has shared security, so you have very little bridging risk. You have a common understanding of how DeFi primitives are working. You have a common language in terms of XCM. You have shared palettes, the tokens palette. So there is a lot of shared thinking and technical infrastructure that you can use when you want to do cross-chain DeFi. So I think this is actually a good point. Interoperable NFTs, I'm not so sure if I would agree with this point, because while you could have common standards for interoperable NFTs, there is a healthy competition going on in the ecosystem about who is becoming the dominant NFT standard, and they're very different in nature. So I wouldn't agree with this point so much, but maybe if there is a standard being established and it is then used as a palette between multiple ecosystems, then again, or blockchains, then again, it would be a very strong point for Polkadot. Scalable dApps. This is true, but let's see what ChatGPT is saying. Developers can build dApps on specialized parachains optimized for specific use cases. Yes. Improving performance and user experience. Yes. As parachains can communicate with each other, dApps can also leverage functionalities and resources from other chains, enhancing their capabilities and utility. Yes, this is a very strong yes. And it's so much a yes that it has been shielded so much in recent months, years, that actually the gigabrains in the space are already discussing where you shouldn't have cross-chain dApp use cases because you're incurring, for example, latency and so on. But yeah, I cannot disagree with what is being said here, scalable dApps. I would much more say actually composable dApps. So dApps that you can compose of vastly different primitives from vastly different chains, and you can make it work together. And I think it will get easier and easier and easier every year, where more and more people are working with the technology and finding better ways to integrate all of this. Data privacy and security, interesting point. Polkadot can support privacy-focused parachains, true, zero-knowledge chains, for example, a Manta network, that provide confidential computing, FADA, and data protection services. I'm not sure if Crust is offering data protection services, but maybe. I mean, you can store the data encrypted, but solid points. Such chains could enable secure data sharing and processing across industries such as healthcare, finance, and supply chain management. I think it's very much true for the underlying technology, which is Substrate, and which allows you, when we're growing this tech stack, you don't have this anywhere else. When you have a programming language like JavaScript, Node.js, you have NPM, which is the Node package manager, which allows you to just pull a module and use it. And you have this in many different programming languages, but you don't have it in blockchain ecosystems other than Polkadot at the moment and Cosmos. And so having these reusable components will actually be very valuable. Bridging legacy systems. So yeah, through bridges, Polkadot can connect to existing blockchain networks, enabling seamless communication and asset transfers between various platforms. This is true. And I think this is one of the core ideas of Polkadot, is creating an internet of blockchains and connecting blockchains together. So I wouldn't maybe call them legacy systems, because I think all of them are still very much valid, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and so on. But yeah, bridging to other systems. And collaborative governance, a big yes. I guess there are other ecosystems that are big on governance too, but the amount of work that I see being put, for example, by Kusama, recently Chaos Style, and I think many other people working at Parity and Web3 Foundation, and all the people that are participating in the governance discussions, this is something where Polkadot and Kusama is very big on. So then I asked ChatGPT, can you compare Polkadot to Ethereum? I think they share some commonalities, but they're also vastly different, and so I wanted to see what ChatGPT is answering here. So Ethereum is a single unified blockchain with smart contracts supporting dApps and the ERC20 token standard. It, back in the time, relied on proof of work and transitioned to proof of stake. Yeah? And so this is a very big difference here. Polkadot is multi-chain with a central relay chain, connected parachains, bridges to external blockchains, nominated proof of stake, and shared security. So then interoperability. Ethereum is mainly focused on its own ecosystem with limited native support for cross-chain communication. Yes. Interoperability between Ethereum and other blockchains typically requires third-party solutions, wrap tokens, bridges. Yes. So Ethereum does not focus on this. On the contrary, there are strong narratives in the Ethereum community going on that you will never need anything other than Ethereum and maybe layer 2s. So this is sort of one kind of maximalism that is going on here. While on Polkadot, interoperability is a core feature. It enables seamless communication between connected parachains and external blockchains. And there is a big focus to work on this. Yeah, and transferring of assets in Polkadot is just a charm. It works like in seconds, and you go back, you go forth. You can. I recently used 4 chains in about 2 minutes, swapping tokens and moving them. Scalability. Ethereum has faced scalability challenges due to network congestion. This is true, leading to slow transactions and high fees. It's true. Ethereum 2.0 aims to address these issues by implementing sharding and transitioning to a POS consensus system. Yeah, there's a little bit of an outdated answer. The current narrative is actually dank sharding, or sort of supporting rollups basically, or other scaling mechanisms for layer 2. And sort of this is the general direction which Ethereum is working on. And Polkadot implements a multi-chain architecture. It was from the beginning, designed to be scalable, and offloads some work to the relay chain and offloads specialized work off to specialized chains. Okay, maybe go a little bit faster here. Ethereum does support smart contracts. Polkadot doesn't support smart contracts on the relay chain because it's not the job of the relay chain. It's the job of specialized chains. And from the smart contract environment here, what we are not seeing here is, yes, there are solidity-based EVM smart contracts, but now WASM is getting a big thing, and it's going to be really interesting to see what's happening here. Governance. Ethereum governance happens off-chain. Informal discussions among core developers and the broader community. This is very fitting. While on Polkadot, governance happens on-chain, and you just use the DOT token to make decisions. And this approach promotes transparency and decentralization in decision-making. It has its own challenges, but at the core, I think it's very much true. Okay. Good. Now, I wanted to compare it to Cosmos because there is often this comparison drawn, and I was really interested to see what's happening here. And I think we will suffer here a little bit on two fronts. One is this is outdated for 2 years, so Polkadot evolved a lot, Cosmos evolved a lot, and also I'm not an expert in Cosmos, so I couldn't argue here if something here is wrong or out of date, but let's work through it. Architecture, I mean, we covered the Polkadot architecture. Let's look at the Cosmos. Cosmos is based on a hub and spoke model with the Cosmos hub at its center and connected sovereign blockchains called zones. Zones use the Tendermint consensus and inter-blockchain protocol for cross-chain communication. So if you look at it very roughly, it's roughly the same idea, but sort of coming from different directions. And I guess this is even part of a separate video that I want to do in the future. Interoperability, Polkadot focuses on XCM, Cosmos focuses on IBC. Yeah, and I guess there are differences in the languages that we have to cover at a different point in time. Yeah, and then it's if you go down the lane here, there's very much similarity. It's also for scalability. It uses different terminology, but it's designed for scalability. In the case of Polkadot, it's basically on as shared security, and from there parachains are branching out. In Cosmos, you have more of a federated process where any chain could pop up and start connecting with other chains. It's more a network-driven approach, and only now Cosmos is moving to shared security and trying to see, for example, how the Cosmos hub can be a shared security provider, and I think other chains in the Cosmos ecosystem too. Governance. Also very much the same thing. So the only difference we really see between Polkadot and Cosmos on a very big scale is the shared security. They had a different approach, where in Polkadot we have the relay chain covering shared security, and it's built from the beginning to allow shared security, while on Cosmos they focused on federation first, and only now are starting to go into shared security. Okay, so what are some common misconceptions about Polkadot and how would you address them? This is also interesting because this was actually fairly accurate answers. Misconception, Polkadot is an Ethereum competitor. No, this is not the case. They have different design goals, they have different values, and they're basically complementary. Misconception, Polkadot is only about interoperability. No, this is not the case. Interoperability is just at the core, but it allows you to have so many palettes, so much stuff that allows you to communicate, have specialist parachains, and be optimized. Misconception, Polkadot and Kusama are the same network. I haven't seen it in that way. I have seen a misconception that Kusama is a test network. Some treat it as a test network, but it's sort of, they're independent networks. They go very much in tandem, step by step, often, but they also have different natures and also different communities. So I would say Kusama is an innovation network, a sister network of Polkadot. We also have other sister networks like Edgeware, for example. Misconception, Polkadot shared security leads to centralization. Yeah, this is hotly debated, and there are some arguments for it and against it. But what we see here as a clarification is a shared security model with relay chain validators, secure all connected parachains. This might appear to centralize security. However, there is a decentralized nominated proof of stake consensus. So yeah, this is sort of a little bit of a shadow argument that's being made here. I think we could actually have a discussion about this because there are some centralization risks. But as of today, I think there is a fairly big landscape of different validators, different communities, different goals, agendas. So the decentralization is there from as it is right now, and I think it's just we need to focus on how can we make sure it stays decentralized in the long term and keep the open culture, keep the open governance. Misconception, Polkadot supports smart contracts on a relay chain. Yeah, this is very often you see Polkadot being called layer 1 smart contract chain, and then everyone in Polkadot goes crazy because within there is this perspective of Polkadot is actually layer 0. But I didn't see this in this conversation, but in another conversation about Polkadot, I saw that ChatGPT constantly talks about Polkadot as being a layer 1 network. Okay, I've been actually asking what is Kusama. I couldn't not ask this. So yeah, it basically says it's a standalone canary experimental network, same architecture, same design principles, And the key differences are faster governance cycle, lower barrier to entry, true. Risk-taking and experimentation, yes, sort of true, but also also people in Kusama are a little bit risk averse, but the expect chaos motto is still reflects through and even reach ChatGPT, which is a nice thing. And it has real economic value, which is also highlighted here, which is very good. So I think it's a fair, good characterization of Kusama in the context of Polkadot. I wanted to ask, is Polkadot a scam? Just to see what ChatGPT is answering. It says, no, Polkadot is not a scam. Polkadot is a legitimate and innovative blockchain platform developed by a team of experienced and respected developers, including Dr. Gavin Wood. And then it goes on to defend, and basically says it has garnered attention, recognition, it has a solid foundation behind it. And then there is a little bit of a disclaimer of be careful when investing. Okay, so to bind it off a little bit and to come to an end of our already half-hour video, so speculate a little. What are the strongest impacts Polkadot can have on the world in the next 10 years? Think big. So I had to prompt a little bit to think outside the box, because the answers were a little bit very specific about technology, and I actually wanted to get shield a little bit. So when you say think big, it starts to add a verb in front of everything. But things that it is seeing is it can redefine global finance because it has an interoperable, scalable infrastructure, and as such it can start to integrate any kind of financial service, lower barriers to entry, and give increased access. Accelerate the adoption of Web3. I do hope so, because it's the Web3 Foundation, and it's the term Web3 which was termed by Gavin Wood. So accelerating the adoption of Web3 is actually why I'm so much focused on Polkadot, because if I see that crypto exists, I want crypto to have a positive impact on the world and not only be its own bubble where money is just being shuffled around, but have actual real world economic impact and improve the lives of people. So this is what I actually want to see on place number 1. Empower cross-chain collaboration, transform digital identity and privacy. So we also have the digital identity thing here, which I think will become super important in the age of AI, when there's just so much opportunity to fake stuff, that actually signing off something with your digital identity and say, yes, this was really created by me, could become a much bigger thing in the future. And when you want to have trustless digital identity, you have to use a digital ledger technology like blockchain. Driving the next generation of decentralized applications. Yes, very much, just because you have different chains doing different stuff, allowing you to compose decentralized applications that are much more complex in nature, much more powerful, much more expressive, and allow you to do more things than you could do before. And this one is interesting, surprised me a little bit. Fostering global governance and decision making. So ChatGPT is actually speculating here that governments and organizations could adopt decision-making processes supported by the blockchain, which is a little bit surprising to me, because usually I think governments are very hesitant to give power away, even if it is to a machine. And then last questions here. How can I get started in Polkadot? And actually listing fairly good points. Learn about Polkadot, read the light paper, read the wiki, acquire DOT tokens, participate in the network, so it chills Polkadot.js, and then join the community, which is good. I think this is the way to get started. I think I was looking at the community website also when I was getting started in Polkadot. Then it says develop on Polkadot, which is excellent, and even gives us a link on where we can get started. I'm not sure if this link is working any longer. It is really working. Okay, so this is very interesting. It has still valid links. And look at the Substrate Developer Hub, and then starts look at projects like Acala, Moonbeam, Kilt. So here you can also see which projects initially did good marketing and did get optimized into ChatGPT. And then at the end, because it's the end of the video, and at the end of each interview, you can ask, can you share some early alpha on Polkadot? and it said, as an AI language model, I'm unable to provide real-time or exclusive alpha information. And then it gives some general tips on how to get informed, and this is basically join a lot of community channels, attend events, monitor projects, and if you are looking for some more alpha on Polkadot, what I can suggest is to look at my previous video where I was deep diving into the Polkadot Q1 2023 report that actually shows hard facts on the numbers on what you can actually see. I'm going to link it here in the video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.